The federal judge in Donald Trump's New York criminal case found the former president in contempt for a 10th time today. The decision is a response to the former president repeatedly violating his gag order. The former president is charged with 34 felony counts for allegedly falsifying business records to cover up an alleged affair ahead of the 2016 election. Katrina is an attorney and CBS News campaign reporter. Graham is a CBS News investigative reporter. It's so great to have you both. Katrina, let's start with you. This is the 10th time Trump has been held in contempt for violating his gag order.
Okay, so what just happened in court is absolutely stunning. And I need to break it down for you right now, because this is the kind of moment that could change everything about Trump's legal situation going forward in ways that nobody expected. One of Trump's own lawyers, a member of his personal legal defense team that he pays to protect him, effectively admitted in open court that critical evidence had been hidden or misrepresented to the judge presiding over the case. Let me say that again, because I really need you to understand how explosive this admission is in the context of American legal proceedings and what it means for Trump's entire defense strategy. A lawyer representing Donald Trump stood up in a courtroom and admitted that evidence had been withheld from the court or presented in a misleading way that did not accurately reflect what the evidence actually showed. And the judge's reaction was immediate and absolutely furious in a way that you rarely see from judges who normally maintain strict composure and professional demeanor, even in the most contentious proceedings. The judge warned right there on the spot that any further deception or stalling tactics would trigger contempt charges and possible jail time for the attorneys involved in this misconduct. We are talking about the very real possibility of a Trump lawyer being hauled off to jail in handcuffs if this kind of misconduct continues in future proceedings. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
At talking about the jurors, time and time again, these are the things that he mentions when he finds Trump in contempt. It's the times when Trump mentions jurors, whether it's in an interview or posting about the jury selection process on social media. What would be a momentous decision is the toll that this would take not just on the defendant, but the court staff, the corrections officers who have to oversee it, the Secret Service agents he mentioned who would have to accompany Trump.
Now I want you to think about what this means in the bigger picture of Trump's legal strategy and how his team has been operating across multiple cases over the past several years in courtrooms across America. This is not an isolated incident that came out of nowhere and surprised everyone who has been following these cases. This is part of a pattern we have seen over and over again in courtrooms across the country involving Trump and his legal representatives. Trump's legal team pushes boundaries constantly to see what they can get away with before facing consequences. They test limits at every opportunity. They treat the court system as something to be gamed and manipulated rather than respected as an institution. And judges have been increasingly frustrated with this approach as case after case reveals the same tactics being employed by the same legal team. We have seen contempt findings issued against Trump personally for violating court orders. We have seen substantial fines imposed for violating gag orders designed to protect witnesses and court staff from harassment. We have seen gag order violations punished repeatedly with escalating consequences that never seem to change the behavior. And now we have reached the point where a judge is openly threatening to put a Trump lawyer in jail for hiding evidence and misleading the court about what that evidence actually showed. The admission itself is remarkable because lawyers almost never admit to hiding evidence or misleading judges in open court proceedings under any circumstances. That kind of admission can end legal careers permanently and result in consequences that follow an attorney for the rest of their professional life. It can result in disbarment from the practice of law, meaning they can never represent clients again. It can lead to criminal charges against the lawyer personally for obstruction of justice and related offenses. For a Trump lawyer to admit in open court that critical evidence had been hidden or misrepresented suggests one of two things that are both deeply troubling. Either they got caught so badly that they had absolutely no choice but to admit what happened and hope the judge shows mercy, or the culture of this legal team has become so reckless that they do not even recognize how serious this kind of misconduct is in the first place. Either explanation is absolutely devastating for Trump's defense going forward because it tells judges everywhere that they simply cannot trust what this legal team tells them in any proceeding. The judge made it crystal clear in the courtroom that the threats being issued are not empty rhetoric designed to generate media coverage or make political points about accountability. Any continued effort to hide evidence or stall proceedings will result in contempt charges being filed immediately against the responsible attorneys. Any further deception will trigger possible criminal referrals that could lead to prosecution of the lawyers themselves by federal authorities. The judge essentially told Trump's legal team that the court is done playing games with them after years of boundary pushing, done giving warnings that get ignored repeatedly, done watching them test limits without facing real consequences that actually change behavior. The next violation will not result in a fine or a stern lecture from the bench like previous violations have produced. It will result in someone going to jail immediately. So in this video, we are going to break down exactly what happened in that courtroom and why the judge reacted so furiously to what was admitted by Trump's legal team during the proceedings. We are going to look at the pattern of legal defiance and boundary pushing that has characterized Trump's legal strategy across multiple cases over many years. We are going to examine what contempt charges and jail threats actually mean in practical terms for the lawyers involved. And we are going to talk about what this means for the broader question of accountability in America. Let us get into it. All right. So let us really dig into what happened in this courtroom and why it represents such a significant escalation in the legal pressure facing Trump and his entire legal team going forward in all of their pending cases. The core of this story is that a Trump lawyer admitted in open court that critical evidence had been hidden or not properly disclosed to the opposing side and to the judge overseeing the proceedings as required by law. This is an extraordinary admission because the rules around evidence disclosure in court cases are not optional guidelines that lawyers can follow when it is convenient for their client and ignore when it is not. They are legal requirements with serious consequences for violations that apply to every lawyer in every case without exception. Lawyers have an absolute obligation to disclose relevant evidence even when it hurts their client's case and helps the other side. They have an obligation to be honest with the court about what evidence exists and what that evidence actually shows, regardless of whether that helps or hurts their client. When a lawyer hides evidence or misrepresents what the evidence shows to gain advantage, that is not aggressive lawyering or zealous advocacy for a client, as some might claim. The judge's response tells you exactly how seriously the court is taking this admission and how fed up judges have become with the tactics of Trump's legal team over the course of multiple proceedings spanning several years. The judge made it crystal clear that any continued effort to hide evidence or stall proceedings would trigger immediate contempt charges against the responsible attorneys with no further warnings given. Contempt of court is not a slap on the wrist or a minor inconvenience for lawyers who can simply pay a fine and move on with their lives. It means the judge has determined that someone has willfully disobeyed a court order or obstructed the administration of justice in a way that cannot be tolerated by the legal system. The consequences can include substantial fines that hurt financially and send a message. They can include jail time served immediately without the possibility of delaying that punishment. They can include both penalties imposed simultaneously to drive home the seriousness of the violation. When a judge threatens contempt in the middle of a hearing, when they make explicit that jail is on the table for future violations, they are communicating clearly to everyone present that they have lost patience entirely. And here is the crucial context that makes this moment so significant in the broader picture of Trump's ongoing legal troubles across multiple jurisdictions. This is not the first time judges have threatened Trump or his legal team with serious consequences for courtroom misconduct in their proceedings over the years. We have seen this pattern play out across multiple cases in ways that show a consistent approach of pushing boundaries and testing limits until judges have no choice but to respond forcefully. Judge Juan Merchan in the New York hush money case has already held Trump in contempt multiple times for violating gag orders that prohibited him from attacking witnesses and court staff publicly. He fined Trump $10,000 and warned explicitly that jail time was on the table if the violations continued, despite the financial penalties. Merchan made clear in his courtroom that he understood people might think jailing a former president was unthinkable in American history, but he was absolutely prepared to do it if necessary to maintain order in his courtroom and enforce his rulings. That warning was not empty rhetoric designed to look tough for media coverage. Merchan meant every single word of it, and everyone in the courtroom understood that. The pattern here is unmistakable when you look at how Trump's legal strategy has operated across multiple cases over multiple years in courtrooms across the country, from New York to Florida to Washington, D.C. The approach seems to be to push every boundary and test every limit and see what you can get away with before facing real consequences that actually hurt, violate gag orders repeatedly, and see if the judge will actually enforce them with meaningful penalties that change behavior, delay proceedings endlessly with motions and appeals, and see if the court will actually impose consequences for obvious stalling tactics, make arguments you know are weak just to slow things down, and see if you can find a sympathetic judge somewhere who will buy them and apparently hide evidence and misrepresent facts and hope you do not get caught doing it until it is too late to matter. This is not how most lawyers operate, because most lawyers understand that their relationship with judges depends entirely on trust built over years of honest practice. Judges need to be able to trust that what lawyers tell them is accurate and complete without having to verify everything independently. The admission of evidence deception puts Trump's entire legal team under a microscope in ways that will affect every case going forward, no matter what court it is in or what judge is presiding over the proceedings. Judges talk to each other informally about problem attorneys and problem cases that cause difficulties. They read about cases involving prominent defendants in legal publications and news coverage. They form impressions about which legal teams are trustworthy and can be relied upon, and which ones require extra scrutiny and independent verification of everything they claim. An admission that evidence was hidden or misrepresented is exactly the kind of thing that travels through legal circles quickly and affects how judges view subsequent filings and arguments from that team in other cases. Every Trump lawyer who appears in any court anywhere in the country is now operating under a shadow created by this admission of misconduct. And the jail threats are not theoretical possibilities that judges mention just to make a point or look tough for the cameras covering high-profile cases involving famous defendants. We have seen judges actually jail lawyers and parties for contempt when they believe the misconduct is serious enough to warrant incarceration as the only effective remedy. It does not happen often because most people back down immediately when a judge makes clear they are serious about imposing real consequences that include jail time. But when someone keeps pushing despite warnings, when they treat judicial threats as bluffs to be called rather than serious warnings, judges absolutely will follow through to maintain the integrity of their courtrooms and the legal system as a whole. The fact that multiple judges across multiple Trump cases have felt the need to explicitly threaten jail tells you something important about how this legal team operates. The political dimension of this situation cannot be ignored because it shapes how the public understands what is happening in these courtrooms and what it means for accountability for powerful people. Trump and his supporters have consistently argued that the legal cases against him are politically motivated persecution designed to stop him politically and prevent him from returning to power. They claim the judges are biased against him because he is a Republican. They claim the prosecutors are weaponizing the justice system unfairly. But the evidence deception admission cuts against that narrative in important ways that are very hard to spin as political persecution. A lawyer admitting that evidence was hidden is not something prosecutors made up to get Trump or hurt him politically. Okay, so let us break this down into what you really need to understand about this situation and what it means for Trump's legal future and for the broader question of whether powerful people face real accountability when they treat the legal system as something to be manipulated rather than respected. Because this is not just about one lawyer making one admission in one hearing on one day. This is about a pattern of conduct that has finally reached a breaking point where judges across multiple jurisdictions are saying enough is enough and backing up those words with real consequences. First point, the evidence deception admission is devastating because it destroys the credibility of Trump's entire legal team going forward in every single case they handle in any court in the country. Credibility is everything for lawyers who practice in courtrooms and appear before judges regularly. Their job depends on judges believing what they say and trusting that their representations are accurate and complete without needing to verify everything independently. When a lawyer admits to hiding or misrepresenting evidence, that trust is gone completely and may never be rebuilt. Not just for that individual lawyer who made the admission, but for the whole team. Because judges will reasonably wonder whether this is an isolated incident or part of a broader pattern of misconduct that has been happening without detection for years. Every filing Trump's team makes from now on will be scrutinized more carefully than normal filings from other attorneys. Every claim they make will be viewed with suspicion. Every representation will need to be verified independently. Second point, the jail threats from judges are real and could actually be carried out if the misconduct continues, because we have seen judges follow through on similar threats in other high-profile cases throughout American legal history when defendants push too far. Judge Merchan has already held Trump in contempt multiple times and explicitly warned that jail is on the table for future violations of his orders, and he clearly meant it. Other judges have made similar warnings across Trump's various legal proceedings in different jurisdictions around the country. These are not empty threats designed to generate headlines or make judges look tough on television for political purposes. They are genuine warnings that judges will impose serious consequences to maintain order in their courtrooms and preserve the integrity of the legal system. The admission of evidence deception makes it more likely, not less likely, that a judge will actually jail someone because it confirms that the misconduct is not accidental or the result of misunderstanding. It is intentional, it is deliberate, it is part of how this legal team operates as a standard practice. Third point, this fits into a broader pattern of Trump and his legal team treating the court system as something to be gamed rather than respected. that has frustrated judges across multiple jurisdictions over many years of litigation. The gag order violations that happen repeatedly despite fines being imposed, the delay tactics designed to push proceedings past elections and other important dates, the weak arguments made just to slow things down and buy time, the apparent belief that normal rules do not apply to this particular defendant because of who he is. Judges have been watching this pattern develop over years, and they are increasingly unwilling to tolerate it in their courtrooms any longer. The admission of evidence deception may be the final straw that breaks the camel's back for some judges who have been giving Trump's team the benefit of the doubt until now, despite their frustrations. Fourth point, the political implications are significant because the admission undermines Trump's narrative that he is the victim of political persecution by biased judges and prosecutors who want to stop him from being president. When your own lawyers admit to hiding evidence, that is not something you can blame on prosecutorial misconduct or judicial bias. That is your team making that admission voluntarily. That is your choice of how to conduct your defense. That is the consequences of the culture you have created within your legal operation over years of pushing boundaries. Trump has spent years claiming that every legal problem he faces is the result of political enemies, weaponizing the justice system against him unfairly. But evidence deception is not something prosecutors invented. It is not something judges made up to get him. It is what his own lawyers admitted to doing in open court under oath. Fifth point, this escalation suggests we may finally be reaching a point where the legal system is willing to impose real consequences on Trump and his team, rather than giving endless warnings that get ignored repeatedly without meaningful follow-through. For years, critics have complained that Trump gets special treatment from the legal system, that judges are reluctant to impose the same consequences on him that they would impose on ordinary defendants who behave the same way. But the explicit jail threats and the furious response to the evidence deception admission suggest that judges are finally running out of patience completely. They are tired of the games that never stop. They are tired of the boundary pushing that continues despite warnings. They are tired of making threats that get ignored. So what happens next, and what should we expect from Trump's legal team going forward as these cases proceed through the courts? Honestly, it is hard to predict with certainty because rational legal strategy would suggest they need to pull back immediately and operate more carefully given the serious warnings they have received from multiple judges. But this legal team has not operated rationally by normal legal standards throughout these proceedings over multiple years. They have consistently pushed limits even after being warned not to by judges. They have violated gag orders even after being fined for previous violations. They apparently hid evidence even knowing the consequences could be severe, so it would not be surprising if the misconduct continues. The courts are clearly frustrated with what they have been seeing from this legal team over many years. The judges are clearly fed up with the tactics being employed repeatedly. The threats are clearly serious and backed by the willingness to follow through if necessary. The only question is whether Trump's legal team will finally get the message and start operating within the rules, or whether they will continue to push until someone actually goes to jail for contempt. This is what happens when you treat the legal system as something to be manipulated rather than respected for years on end without facing real consequences that change behavior. Eventually, judges stop giving warnings. Eventually, they stop accepting excuses. Eventually, they decide that the only way to maintain the integrity of their courtrooms is to impose consequences that actually hurt. I will be back with more updates as this situation develops. Stay tuned.